All right, and welcome to a very special Monday drop. We got all of our drops done yesterday except for NASCAR. We're getting ready to jump into that here in just a second. We did our NFL preview preseason with Ed Kratz, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles and SI.com. We did an IndyCar preview. We got it done like right before the race up there north of Ontario on that race. And then we did our college football preview, 3 weeks till college football. We talked about the AP poll in the top 25, and I'm a little disappointed that my Indiana Hoosiers got was we was expecting that they would be somewhere around fourth. They ended up in sixth, but hey, it's just the preseason, so we'll see what's happening. But join us now from the lovely state of Virginia, Mr. Steve Wilson, editor in chief of SpeedwayDigest.com, our official NASCAR contributor. How are you, sir? Happy Monday.
Hey, it's another Monday. What can I say?
As long as it's not a manic Monday, right? as,
Yeah, yeah.
as they say. Well, let's get into it. Obviously, breaking news as far as especially you and I and those that cover the sport and knew this was coming and knew what it was going to happen. But today, Hendrick Motorsports said, "Hey, we're going to go ahead and make it official." Connor Zillage signs a multi-year deal with Hendrick Motorsports. Connor Zillage, won 10 O'Reilly Series races last year, but has really struggled this year as a rookie in the NASCAR Cup Series. Currently, he sits 34th in the Cup standings. But, however, in the end of after 2027 season, the 20-year-old will leave Trackhouse and join Hendrick Motorsports. And one would say he's going to be a lifer like Jeff Gordon and others have proven that they'll be there, because usually Hendrick when they sign a driver, they know who they want, and that's exactly what happened with Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman, who, as we remember, back at the Brickyard here in Indianapolis, announced his retirement after next season. And so Hendrick signed Zillage to a multi-year deal and Alley will remain the sponsor on the number 48 car. And as old folks remember that when that car belonged to Jimmy Johnson. But well, what are your thoughts? I mean, like I said, you and I knew this was happening. We predicted that this would be the driver that would come in there, but why the push to make the announcement so early? We've got a whole year. Go ahead.
Well, I just think with this is that Hendrick Motorsports wants to lock somebody up, and Connor Zillage only had a contract to drive through the end of next year with Trackhouse Racing. So you have to think that they were in that period of trying to extend him beyond next year, and this was the perfect opportunity in which Hendrick Motorsports could come in there and grab somebody that they knew that's proven. You go back and you talk about his career, you talk about just this season in general, and 8 of the 20 plus races, 24 races, he's crashed and not finished. There was a string between Charlotte, Nashville, Michigan. He crashed out every single week. He crashed a couple weeks ago right there in
Right.
Indy, barely completing not even half of the race there. He rebounded a little bit in Iowa, a little bit of help in Richmond, but overall, his season has just not gone the way that I think that they wanted it to go. And he knows this. Trackhouse knows this. His partners know this. They all know that this is just not the way that they wanted this season to go, and especially somebody that came out of last year with 10 races, winning, coming up short in the championship race in Phoenix last year to Jesse Love. There's a lot of prospect behind him, and he is a proven winner. Not only there, the Rolex 24,
Mm-hmm.
he's a class winner there. He's got credentials across the board that show that he can do this. And I think if you look back at JRM, those cars are prepared. They're engineered with help of Hendrick Motorsports, so they know who they were getting in Connor Zillage. They know that that is somebody who can win in their cars, and they believe in him enough that they want to lock him up early so that nobody else goes out there and grab him before the end of his contract there at Trackhouse Racing. And I think this is the perfect opportunity because you're just pairing up once again, somebody that the Hendrick Motorsports knows, somebody that's proven to win in their equipment that is with help of JRM in the No App Series last year. This is, but again, this leaves out Corey Day. What do you do with Corey
Exactly.
Day? This is somebody that's being prepared by Jeff Gordon. This is somebody that is protege. And they sat him down. And I think we've talked about this a couple of times earlier this year when Corey Day was wrecking out of these races, wasn't doing so well. And Jeff Gordon and Rick Hendrick sat him down and said, "Hey, look, you've got the talent to go out here and win this. You can step out of these cars, go race a sprint car, and win these things like Kyle Larson does every other weekend. So we know you can win." And they sat him down, they calmed him down, and he's got 2 wins this year. But that also puts him on a track of what do you do with Corey Day
Mm,
now that you've taken the 48 off the board. You're not getting rid of Chase Elliott. You're not getting rid of anybody else, William Byron over there. They're there. That's the way Hendrick operates.
for
You're
sure.
in that
Sure.
car. You're in that car. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I just think, this is where they want him to be. And where they put Corey Day in the future, I don't know. I suspect, and look, I know that the Joe Custer and Gene Haas over there at Haas Factory team have said, look, the car, the charter for the Cup car is not up for sale. Cole Custer is our driver over here. But, they get a lot of engineering. They get a lot of help from Hendrick Motorsports. So, is that a path? Is that a path to, maybe Custer steps back. Maybe he goes back to the No Apps team with Haas Factory team. But and Corey Day gets a car. I don't know. I don't think so. I'm just kind of throwing that into the mix because there's just a lot of rumors swirling around and parts and pieces that are trying to be moved around the board.
Well, and here's the thing. You said it about, Chase Elliott and of course what we know about Connor Zillage and William Byron was in the 48 car and he would have been a lifer, as we say, uh, to stay in the car. That's how Hendricks is. So what I think is okay. It's just like anything else. Next man up. Anything can happen. Even though we don't see it happening right now, anything can happen in the foreseeable future. I think he stays right where he's at, and he's next man up with Hendrick Motorsports. And as you said, there might be an opportunity that pops up, and there might be in a couple of years, and just get some more experience under his belt, win some. And that's the key. Winning changes everything, right? And so if he continues to do well and win and follow, obviously Jeff Gordon, one of the best. If you're going to get advice from somebody, who better than Jeff Gordon to give you advice on how to win races, and he follows his mentorship, he'll be just fine. Now, whether or not he ends up in the Hendricks car, we don't know that, but I do think that he's at least established a very very good baseline for him to get into the Cup race and you know, uh, go from there. Now, the other question I would have, Osco, was what are your thoughts about Raja Guru? And I know I'm saying that name wrong, but there again, he's also a driver that's being groomed. What are our thoughts about him? But you really do feel bad for Connor Day and Rajay as well when this came down today.
Yeah, that's once again that's another wrinkle into all of this because Raja has been bounced back and forth between JRM cars and Jordan Anderson cars this year, in which they give them both of them are getting help once again from Hendrick, and he's got Hendrick's name on the hood of his car and on his fire suit every single weekend. So, once again, you've got somebody out there that is in a Corey Day type situation. What do you do with them? And I don't know what the answer is because there's only so many seats out there, and for all we know, heck, Roger or Corey Day may end up in the number 88 that's being vacated by Connor Zillage with help from Hendrick Motorsports. For all we know, these are just chess pieces that get moved around the board every single year, and I think we get to talk about some of these things, and it's kind of sad when you get the Alex Bowman retiring so early in this sport because we've just become accustomed to motorsports is one of those sports where people go well into their 40s, and Denny Hamlin is well into that, and still competing for championships. And a lot of other sports don't have that, where there's this constant refresh of young talent coming in, and late 20s, early 30s are being retired out of baseball and football or stick and ball sports, and we just don't have that. So you just don't get there's just not enough pieces on the board to move around, unfortunately, for these young talents like Raja, like Corey Day, and others that are coming up through the ranks right now. What do you do with them? Yes, eventually Denny Hamlin's going to be out of that number 11, so somebody's going to have to be replaced
Right.
there. But for the most but for the most part, outside of Brad Keselowski and one or two others, I mean, this sport doesn't have a whole lot of people that are on a track to retire in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years, that would put them in the Cup Series or in a Cup Series car. So I just think right now you're just kind of bound by that. And unfortunately, I think Raja and Corey will have to accept that for now until that spot becomes available.
I heard some, and I think that's all it was rumors, but maybe whether there's rumors, there's always a little bit of truth in rumor. I heard that Rajay would consider an IndyCar ride if one opened up for him, especially even for the Indy 500. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, we've seen it before. I think the most successful of them all is Tony Stewart, that bounced
Yes.
back and forth between the two. Yeah, I mean, Kyle Larson is one of the greatest drivers of our generation, and he struggled in those cars, as in the Indy 500. But if Roger wants to get out there, I think a move for him there's some weekends in which he has the ability to maybe get into one of those Indy NXT cars out there and race a couple of those races and see how he feels
Hmm.
into it. So there's opportunities out there for him to drive.
Well, yeah, and we'll be following that, see what happens. All right, well, let's talk a little bit. Of course, Joy wins the race in Richmond in a thrilling race at night. But there are Hendrick. Speaking of Hendrick driver, among five eliminated from NASCAR title contention, and I believe that was Alex Bowman. Not that it's a big deal because as we just had a discussion about that, but there are just 152 points left on the table for each NASCAR Cup Series driver over the final two races of a 26 regular season, and each driver can only make up a maximum of 150 points on any of those drivers. So now we see where the difference is. With no more win and in, drivers need to be inside the top 16 in the point standings to qualify for the postseason when the regular season concludes. In 16th final playoff spot is currently held by Trackhouse Racing's Shane Van Gisbergen, or our SVG, as we like to call him, after Team Penske, Austin Cindric, passed him for 15th with the season best third. So as we are going into the postseason determination, you look at drivers like Ajay Allmendinger. It looks like he's probably out of the mix. What are your thoughts about the postseason and where we stand now? Who's on the bubble? Who's going to go forward with this new no more win and type of uh, competition level?
Yeah, Penske as a whole also centered Joe Logano here in the last couple of weeks. Ever since the Windy World 400 in North Wilkesboro, Joe Logano winning over the weekend. We talked a lot about early on in the year that Penske was just not that great. Ford was just not that great. Outside of Ryan Blaney, who's up there in the top couple, chasing Denny Hamlin by a matter of 100 and some points. At this point, I believe that even though mathematically Hamlin did not lock up the regular season already, he will mathematically probably do that this weekend in New Hampshire, providing that nothing crazy happens. But that just shows that Ryan Blaney moved around Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs got two wins this year already, and you got Austin Cindric, who battled in the top 5, top 10 all night long. And we're starting to talk more and more about Penske, and somehow they are rising to the top. And we even saw this with Josh Berry over the weekend. I mean, he started in the top 5, finished 8th. That's a Penske powered car in the Ford camp. So, I know he's out of this thing, but the point is that we're not so much talking about, hey, is Penske, is Ford going to be able to compete? I think it's been shown that they now have the ability to do so. Whether anybody can get up there and really challenge Denny Hamlin, Ty Gibbs, Ryan Blaney at this point, I don't know. But Tyler Reddick has been on a slide over the last couple of weeks. 5 wins this season, and he has just absolutely just been out of this thing over the last couple of weeks. Kyle Larson over the weekend started 31st. I mean, just a horrible, horrible start for him. But he ended up managing, a top. I think he finished 6th or 7th in the race on Saturday night. So again, we've got a lot of comers and goros right now, and Shane Van Gisbergen, who's sitting right there on that bubble. He, over the last I watched him in the Truck Series race, and that guy started on the pole, and he managed to come out of there competing in the top 2 or 3 all night, actually all afternoon, because it got, kind of kicked off. But that gave him more experience, and we're seeing that Shane Van Gisbergen is starting to do better and better. Going back to Wilkesboro, he was the same way. He led laps at Wilkesboro. He started to figure out some of these smaller ovals. It's just, Trackhouse racing is got to be able to compete with the rest of the field. And I think right now, I don't think it's so much Shane Van Gisbergen. I just think it's Trackhouse racing that they've been on this slide, and they, with him, Ross Chastain, who's right there along in the bubble too, with Ryan Preece, and those guys are just separated by a matter of 60, 70 points or something like that. Trackhouse has to find a way to compete, especially now that Penske has been able to move, Austin Cindric further up into that top 16 above the cutoff line. And right now, that's where we stand. We just stand with Trackhouse Racing, unfortunately, just not doing very good. And Penske starting to rise to the top at this moment.
Yeah, always you're going to look for Penske drivers to go to the top, because when you race for Penske, well, let's just, you win races. Logano's 2 victories have come to short tracks at North Wilkesboro and Richmond, but he also is well known for running Atlanta, of course, here in Indianapolis, and he had 3 finishes in the last 4 races, and having 2 third places and finishes in the first 20 races this year. He's been he has had an incredible turnaround, and really, you got to give credit to crew chief Paul Wolf to just what he's been able to do with this team. And you feel bad for Chase Briscoe and on the race in Richmond, where he just kind of fell short. And I like Chase. I've got to know him and had really enjoyed talking with him. So I'm a fan of Chase. But also, it's good to see Joey Logano up there. But yeah, you got to feel for Chase Briscoe in that loss on Richmond the other night.
Yeah, because at this, earlier in the season, Chase Briscoe was right up there along Denny Hamlin, Ty Gibbs, Tyler Reddick, and those guys. It really was a Toyota powerhouse up there, and it still kind of is, and it still is in the top 5 between them all, with Ryan Blaney being the only other non-Toyota manufacturer in the top 5. But Chase Briscoe, he had opportunities throughout that race in Richmond. He was obviously able to go out there and compete with Joe Logano. He can make those quality passes out there, but yeah, he just fell short. But that unfortunately, is just kind of where we are right now between between Joey Logano and the rest of the field and Penske, is that they've come on once again. They've come on late in the season and have figured something out where other drivers are faltering. Penske once again is finding ways to compete with the Joe Gibbs Racing, the Toyota camp out there, and unfortunately Chase Briscoe is kind of loped into that. He's got to win this year, but he's locked into this thing later on this year, but he's going to have to find a way to beat not only his teammates, but his affiliates too, with Tyler Reddick and, everybody else up there too. Christopher Bell is kind of chasing him too. So you've got a lot of Toyotas that you're going to have to compete against. And Chase Briscoe he can win. He's just going to have to find a way to compete with those Toyotas around him.
Let's talk a little bit about Austin Cindric. He finished third, and SVG finished 14th to give themselves some breathing room with just races at New Hampshire and Daytona to finish out the regular season. Their biggest challenger, though, has been Ryan Preece, and got caught a couple of laps down when the caution came out during the pit cycle that settled him for 17th. That's just going to happen in a short track. Cindric is now 63 points up on Priest, and SVG has a 50-point cushion. As far as the big picture goes for the season, it was really important to capitalize on a good car. That's what was said in a press release for Cindric from Ford. So drivers don't have to worry about their buffer anymore. You got Chase Briscoe, Chase Elliott, Christopher Bell. They've all clinched spots Saturday night in the chase. So 9 spots remain, and Priest has run enough, well enough, but not consistently enough. So, what are your thoughts, Ryan Priest, Austin Cindric? Again, 9 slots left. Who gets those?
I think if you look at, Ryan Preece we're going to come to Daytona in a week and a half, and Ryan Preece has really been, I think he's joked about this, about launching off as an astronaut multiple times there. He is, and I think that's probably where the worry comes in at, is that is such an uncontrollable race that if you just don't have these cushions going into Daytona, and you're a matter of these number of points up and down on somebody, I think you're going to have to do something. Ryan Preece is going to have to do something this weekend in New Hampshire. He's won modified races out there, so obviously he can go to victory lane there and bump Shane Van Gisbergen out of this thing. If he's not able to capitalize, it's really going to be kind of a hard deal for him, because RFK Racing as a whole started the season off. They were kind of in the same Penske type Ford, just not being able to compete. Chris Buescher is the only one that seems to have been able to go out there and put up any numbers this year. He's dropped a couple of spots over this weekend. He's not locked in. He's still in the top 10, but he still has plenty of points between him, over 100 points between him and the cutoff line. So he mathematically can get himself into this thing this weekend. But it really, once again, Brad Keselowski, he's far below this line too. He's 70, 80 points below the line. So once again, RFK as a whole are going to have to find, if they have the opportunity in Daytona, it's going to have to be the trio of them working together to control the field and be able to put up stage points in order to be able to potentially get themselves into this thing, because you just can't be caught up early in something there at Daytona. You've got to be able to get some kind of stage points, especially if Ryan Preece can't throw up a lot of points this weekend in New Hampshire.
I'll tell you what, a fun story. Kyle Larson, being Kyle Larson, jumps out of his car after a sixth-place finish and tried to get to the rain delay in Knoxville Nationals, which is the biggest sprint car race of the season, and was a couple hours away by plane in Iowa, and was being delayed by rain. Larson qualified for the main event earlier in the week, knowing that he likely couldn't make it unless weather helped him out in this cause, which he did. And recently we saw the same thing when he was trying to run the double Memorial Day here at Indianapolis and Charlotte, and the weather was not able on his side. But this time, Hendrick Motorsports arranged his flight to Knoxville, and Larson got there just in time to get in the car and win the race. Kyle Larson, being Kyle Larson, he never ceases to amaze me, the things he can do. Did you see
No.
that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, not at all. Kyle Larson jumped out of that car, ran, 20, 25 laps between the race. The Hendrick, the crew chief, the track officials were all working together to get him out of there and get him over to the airport so that they can leave and get to Knoxville. He hops on a plane, goes out there. What was it? Something like 3 o'clock on the East Coast time. By the time that deal ended, he'd been up all day long, racing all day long, and found a way to go to victory lane. What was it, like his fourth or fifth Knoxville victory, something like that?
Yeah, he's a unicorn. I mean, there's nobody like him, that's for sure. Well, the series heads to the 1.058 mile oval in New Hampshire Motor Speedway, Lawton, next weekend for its lone stop there for the season. The track will play host to the Chase race next year. So even drivers who were already in the Chase will want to run well and have a good feeling about the track when they return in 2027. Ryan Blaney is the defending winner of the race. Take us to New Hampshire, and of course, there's the lobster, which gets more attention in the winter sometimes. Go ahead.
Yeah, sometimes it does out there, and Christopher Bell too. Yes, he's locked in, but he has opportunities this weekend. He's a previous winner there. It's a really flat track, so it's really can be very hard to navigate out there. It still races a little bit like a short track, but it gives you a little bit more open on those long straightaways out there. So once again, yeah, you're going to have a competition out there of some of these drivers that and short tracks right now seem to be in the Penske powerhouse somehow. They figured these little short tracks out, and while that thing races as a short track, as you say, he's the defending winner. Somehow they've all figured this deal out, and yes, we're going to keep talking about Penske as long as they keep figuring this whole deal out. And I think you look at Blaney, you look at Logano, the two of them together have figured something out. Look for them to being up there up front all day long and being the ones looking for the win.
Fun story. I know you're a Commanders fan. Did you see this story? And then we got to wrap up and put a ball. Did you see this story about the Joe Gibbs Racing won't be required to change the number 54 race, despite Joe Gibbs' ties with the Washington Commanders. The use of the number 54 is permitted, even though it includes a number 5. I don't know how much you follow this story, but I know you're a Commanders fan. The number 5 has been in the news a lot. Over the past week or so, after it was granted to the LSU sophomore cornerback DJ Pickett, leading the reaction from the LSU Heisman Trophy winner and current Washington quarterback Jaden Daniels. The no football player in the LSU team has worn the number 5 in Daniels' college career start in 2023. So that's it. I guess it was just a big stir because Ty Gibbs cars at number 54. I don't know how much you heard about, but I thought, okay, if we can waste our brain space on social media anymore, let's get worked up about a NASCAR car driver number and a driver and a player for the Commanders. Joe Gibbs will be eternally linked to the Commanders for the Redskins, depending on your side of the view there. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, that whole stir between I just think it was kind of dumb. It was
Yeah.
really dumb, and it didn't do them any favors from the Commanders. The Commanders need all the PR and all the nice
Yes, they
PR
do.
that they can get, and they did themselves no favors in that.
Real quickly, I know this isn't NASCAR, but it is certainly IndyCar. We cover a lot of IndyCar on here. We talked about this on our other pod with from the Push to Pass podcast, and they are going to be IndyCar is going to be in DC. I know you know this. This next weekend, I was hoping to be able to get there, but just schedules weren't permitted, and Melissa's being a school teacher, all kinds of reasons kept us from going. But how exciting is this next weekend? IndyCar in Washington D.C. in the streets of D.C. It's going to pass the White House, the Washington Monument, the House of Representatives, all the main big monuments, Washington Mall, and it's going to I think it has 9 turns. Here's another kicker: if you happen to be one of the lucky ones that get in to the venue, it's free for the fans. I think for a lot of reasons, you take your political crap away. I know there's a lot of people out there that just want to get all worked up because, oh my God, so we're not going to go down that range of it. But I think if you as an American, you're not proud that on the 250th anniversary of that one of the biggest racing series in the world comes to Washington D.C. and represents the United States of America in D.C., you have just lost your everlasting mind. I'll leave it at that. But what are your thoughts about how exciting is that?
It's actually pretty cool because if you go back and you look at the history of all of this, the last time that a race was staged inside of DC was like something like Andrew Jackson, 170, 60 some, as
That was
80
a
some.
horse race, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a horse race staged in the streets of DC. That, nearly 200 years ago, we're talking that Andrew Jackson did this thing. So yeah, you've got to be, this thing is really cool. You get to see DC in all of its glory. And we just come off another street race in Ontario this past weekend. So, hopefully this will not be plagued by the same issues and the
Oh God.
certification of the track, that they can get this thing going. And there's not
Yes.
a whole lot of, let's keep the weather out. Hopefully the FIA officials credit the track and we can move on with the schedule, because this is going to be a really cool opportunity. Once again, probably nobody that is living today will ever see it again.
I know it's freaking amazing. And you mentioned the issue up there in Ontario. What an embarrassment for the promoter. And Doug Bowles, I know him. I've known him for many years, and one of the nicest guys in the world. And really hard to get him riled up, but he got riled up on this. And he's also the president of IndyCar, but he's also the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, two jobs. But he said in a press release, he goes, to say this is disappointing is the understatement of all understatements. And IndyCar will deal with these promoters individually, but they were unable to finish the track. And so they couldn't have the first scheduled practice. And they got everything done and got everything certified. But my God, if you're that promoter, you're never going to, you better enjoy this, because this was going to be it for you with IndyCar.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
All
Well,
right, Steve Wilson, editor in chief of SpeedwayDigest.com, joins us for our weekly NASCAR drop. We're going to catch up with him next week to talk about New Hampshire, or actually later this week. See what are you working on this week? Where can people find your work and masterpieces, sir?
we're getting close to that cutoff. Got a few opportunities this weekend for a few drivers to mathematically lock themselves into postseason, and then we're just going to keep watching around that bubble with the Hendrick, SVG, Chastain, Keselowski, and others that have the potential to get in.
All right, Steve, we look forward to it. I hope you have yourself a great week. Thanks for joining us on a Monday afternoon, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.